Kia ora koutou katoa, e ho mā, no mai, haere mai, ki te papatakara or StayMe Always, bringing it to you organic, live and dynamic. So bring me your cups. Now tonight I felt it was applicable, considering we are in the presence of somebody amazing, to cheers to a glass of red wine. So I'm lifting my cup. Cheers.
My virtual one.
And let's dip into the healing well. So I am privileged to have an amazing wahine sitting in front of myself and Tizi created. Someone very special to Tizi, and I am going to now say myself, to be a part of our kaupapa, our show. And before we actually just touch and go into the life of Kay Marie, what's really important in terms of why I've created these shows, so I do have a series called AROHA Tāne, and I've now created a show called AROHA WAHINE. And the whole point behind the kaupapa and us tautokoing to the culture, as well as, in this case, female, is to create a safe space to converse about everything to do with well-being. We have 3 essential totem poles: mental well-being, emotional wellness, spiritual awareness. And it's really about getting in touch and conversing about various aspects of life and the everyday struggles and situations that are affecting people everywhere, all over the world. And what we want to do is provide different ways to manage, support, and understand how to get through the disruption life brings, along with that spiritual approach. So let's get into it. So I am privileged, as I stated, to say that I have Kay Marie Dunn on our show. And she is an amazing wahine. I've been given so much information to do with her background, who she is. She has a lot to do with empowering women, not just women alone, but also the Indigenous cultures all over the world. I know, and I have been told, that you are very much so an entrepreneur in terms of various fields, e-commerce. I know you've got your own business, and you've had a lot to do with various government-select committees. So, Kay Marie, tell us, give us a little bit about you, give us a synopsis of you and who you are.
Kia ora. Tēnā kōrua, tutahi he mihi tēnei kia koe pau, mō tō karakia, e tūwhera ana i tō tātou nei hui. Kia koe Jamie, thank you for hosting the show, AROHA WAHINE. It's really wonderful to be here. I feel a bit shy because that felt like a really big description of me, and I'm not entirely certain if all of those parts describe me well. I would say I'm definitely a professional hautatu, so I love to be curious. I like to kind of rub my shoulder into things that interest me and I hope make a difference in the world. And I've been involved in a couple of select committee presentations. I'm not a specialist in e-commerce. I am part of a team that teach e-commerce, but I help support the pastoral care of our akonga, our students. And so through that, I get to learn through others. And I run 2 companies. One is called Mea, Making Everything Achievable, and the other company that I'm privileged to have co-founded is called AHO, which is a whakapapa decentralized platform that helps to keep our genealogy and help whānau create their own private archival systems to protect their taonga, their memories, and items of significance that matter most to them. So, a little bit about me, I te pua ki ahau, ki raro I te maru o Ngāti Kauwhata, Ngāti Pikiahu Waiwai. I grew up in Friendly Fielding, which is a small agricultural town nestled in the Manawatu. And I was raised with my stepfather's whānau, who are the Arapere family, and also the Dewey whānau, who was my mother's first husband. So that's how we landed in Fielding. But my father is actually from a place called Pangaru in the Hokianga, North Hokianga to be exact. We're of the Takawira Tehi line, and I come from Ngāti Manawa Marae and Ngāti Manawa Hapu from Te Raroa. My grandmother my grandmother's father was from a place called Te Hikutu, which is just around the corner, around the bend a bit, but that stretches us into Ngāpuhi territory. My grandfather is a Dun, and I say Dun because we hail from Irish whakapapa, but also we from the Moitara line, from Pākānai, and I'm also from Ngāti Korokoro as well. And then my grandfather's mother is a tiawa from Ngāti Kahu, from a place called Matangirau. My grandmother, my mother's mother, she's from a place called Whatawhata, so Ngāti Mahanga ki Waikato. And my grandfather, who's kind of around the corner-ish from you both, he's from a place called Ngai Tamanuhiri, which is a small and beautiful place just out of Gisborne. And his mother is from Ngāti Kahungunu, but a place called Te Hauke. Our hapu is Ngai Te Rangi Koianake. So I was going to say I'm a mongrel from different places, but in a way I am. I do derive from lots of different whakapapa lines, which I'm very pleased with, and it depends on where I am, will depend on which whakapapa line I'll lean into. And I live currently, my home is in Wainuiomata, but I spend a great deal of time here in Te Whanganui Atara and also in Whangarei.
And yes, it's my old stomping ground of Whatawhata just down the road, so I know that area quite well. You know, we were talking pre-show, and what's evident in the world that we're living in now and how it's currently evolving with the effect that COVID has had and all that controversy, and obviously the effect that it's having on people's mental well-being, their emotional wellness, and even, you know, tapping into that spiritual awareness. We were talking about the different things that we were both doing to help ourselves. Now, it's not directly in relation to COVID, but ultimately, you know, that all have an effect on everybody in some way, shape or form. And, you know, we were talking about, you mentioned that you were doing a 90-day wellbeing program for yourself. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that and why you made the decision to want to go down that path and create that journey for yourself?
Sure. Well, it was, I decided to do a radical self-care journey, which was, you know, because I like to do things to the extreme sometimes. And I think over the last 12 months particularly, it has been a very unrelentless year and lots of work and lots of different areas. But I recognised that in order for me to be the best version of myself, I actually needed to start to pay attention to my overall well-being, my hinengaro, my mind, my tinana, my body, and also my whānau. And for the longest time, I've really just focused in on, and I wouldn't just say career, but my mahi has taken precedence. And I felt quite justified that, you know, I was doing good work and, you know, whatever I was doing, I felt that it was impactful and important. But what I had actually started to neglect, and I had been neglecting, was actually taking very good care of my body. And for my entire life, essentially, I haven't had to lean into my physical body because I was using this to get through life. And I was using the skills and capabilities of my mind to get me from this step to the next step. And again, I felt justified to not have to look after myself because I was busy trying to be a caretaker for other people. And I guess I came to a particular point where I realised that in order for me to be able to have full integrity in the mahi that I was doing, that I needed to actually do something quite radical, which is to just really care for myself. And self-care could take form in lots of different ways, but for me particularly, I wanted to be a lot more kinder in the way that I spoke to myself and about myself. I wanted to have deeper sleep. Like I'm like, yeah, it's like sleep time. I have sleep parties now, which tells my age. And I wanted to feel good, you know, like I think that, and this is the first time in 7 years where I've actually been still. I've actually been on the road, living out of a suitcase, literally doing my mahi for 7 years straight. And so part of that could have been about not avoiding and distractions, But also I hadn't realised how tired I was. And in November last year, I had really gotten myself to a point where I was actually bone tired. And there were two occasions that actually started me on this journey, even though I've only been on this hikoi for probably about 70 days plus. I connected with a really amazing wahine called Savannah, and I invited her to a wānanga that we were hosting, and she did this amazing workshop on the whare tangata and helping us as wahine reconnect to our womb and our womb wellness, and which also connects to sensuality and our femininity and what that means. And then the other part, of course, was just really recognizing that if I kept operating the way that I did, I was going to get really sick. Around that time also, a really dear friend of mine, a close mate of mine, had also been diagnosed with stage 4 cervical cancer. And then a lot of loved ones around me were actually dying as well. And if there's anything as a tohu, as a signpost to tell us, hey, look, you know what, you need to pay attention to these things. And a lot of us as Māori who are doing lots of different mahi or trying to be of service to our people, somewhere, somehow, we end up not paying attention to the tohu inside our own bodies. So I just started to pay attention to different things, and pay attention to the kai that I was eating, pay attention to the things that I was thinking about, pay attention to the micro habits that make up my daily living, and also pay a lot more attention to the things that I think really matter, which is friendship, leaning in and loving my whānau, and actually learning to love myself again.
And I'm really glad that you brought up that health aspect, because you know, when you look at your history, and look, I'm not sure exactly what your history looks like, but you know, my family, we have breast cancer, and there's a line of breast cancer that goes back many generations, and it's those initial signs that you're given through your senses potentially that, again, as women, as wahine, as mothers, we are so busy that we don't take note of those signs. And it's so important that we grasp when we take hold, and we hold on to them for dear life, because ultimately, in this case for our family, that's actually where it's going to lead. And it's really important that we stop and actually smell the roses. And multiple times I've spoken on these shows where, as a mother, I've given various experiences that I've had to deal with my children, with my family, that you put the pressure on yourself because you are at a point where you need to uphold yourself to a level of society, within the family, within the business, within your own friendship, that you actually don't see the signs, and they're literally sitting there in front of you. And how have you been able to really see those signs to then make that initial change?
I think that there have been various signs. I think one of them is when you start losing joy for the things that you used to love. And I think that's a really big sign, because, you know, you're bone tired, and being bone tired is not a good place to be, especially if that's the sign of burnout. And I think that's one. I think also being in a position of responsibility when I've got a large team, and it was really important that I was, you know, I hate to say practice what you preach, but in many ways I needed to, especially in the world that we work in. It was very important that they were taking good care of their hauora, their well-being. And so I didn't feel comfortable to say, you know, hey, look, you need to be doing these things, or you need to explore these things. And I wasn't actually practicing that or leading out by example. And in no way am I a great example, and I don't do it all the time. But I guess I've become more gentler with myself. I think that I'm not going to put immense pressure on myself to become a something, because ultimately, is that out of my ego? Like, am I driven by my ego to be a something, to be a leader, or actually really coming back to basics to say, what does it feel like to be healthy? And what kind of decisions might I make when I'm taking really good care of myself? And you can make decisions because you're harried and you're rushing and it's crisis, versus being toe within your own being and being able to make really good decisions because your brain isn't foggy, and you've had enough sleep, and you just can be present and really listen to people. And I think that I know the difference between the two. And so I guess for me, I am really committed to doing the best that I can, to be of service. But for so long, I'd been outward focused. You know, I had always kind of put myself right down to the bottom and felt that that was me being of service. Whereas now I started to recognize that listening to the signs of what my body is telling me, understanding the impact of how I'm being, what's my energy like, and then how am I actually making better decisions that are going to serve others. I guess I had to find a different reason to motivate me to make the changes that I needed to.
I like the fact that you've just mentioned about the different reasons and purpose, and we spoke about this earlier, that a lot of people don't actually know what their purpose is. They don't understand what a purpose is. And for everybody, it looks very different. But once you actually grasp the concept and you have a very clear understanding what your purpose is and how you actually work towards that, it becomes clearer in terms of what you need to do. And I know for yourself, we were talking a lot about reprogramming our self-conscious to help us to actually move forward to then become that better self that you were talking about. So do you want to enlighten us in terms of, you know, what reprogramming your self-conscious looked like?
Yeah, so one of the programs that I'm supporting is called the Kahawi Te Ao program, which is a Indigenous e-commerce training program. We've got over 240 students that are right now training to learn and understand e-commerce and how to make money from home. And our first module that we released to the rōpū, to the group, was mindset. And in going through the training with my team, I recognised that there were parts in my practice, you know, those micro habits that I recognised could actually be a bit of a barrier to me being able to expand and grow. And I think in one way or another, as colonised Indigenous people, we've all been influenced and impacted by trauma. And this isn't like, hey, it's the Paul K. Marie Dunn story. It's more around, I recognise that trauma has played a significant role in shaping the decisions that I've made in my life. And I think when you're in the space of encouraging or enabling whānau to think outside of their comfort zone, or to explore wealth, like true wealth, and it's not just about making a lot of money, but it's what does wealth look like for you. And most of our students and a lot of the people that we work with, wealth was health and well-being. So when we think about the first 7 years of our life, is basically us being little sponges, soaking in the environments that we've been raised in, the thinking and the culture of our parents, the people that we've been exposed to. That first 7 years of our life is so critical. It's the building blocks of everything else that we do beyond those 7 years. So often the things that we do and think about and consider, 95% of that is happening within the subconscious mind. And we don't actually know what that is really until, again, we recognise that, oh, actually, where did that thought come from? Or where do all these kind of limiting beliefs come from? And so part of that, as a result of that module, and also kind of being about it rather than just kind of learning and talking about it, I decided that I would actually embark on a program, a range of different programs, where I basically just listen to different kōrero that's going to help heal the back end of the mind. So whether or not that's things like, hey, what are the kinds of traumas that I experienced as a child? And there's a lot of work around, you know, inner child work. And so what does that look like? What about the reprogramming of self-love and being kind? And so that would just be a whole stack of repeated statements like, you are worthy, you are capable, you can do this. And so that when I wake up, actually, I don't have the limiting beliefs that might prevent me from making a decision because I'm scared, or because I have something that might prevent me from taking action. And so I've found that very, very healing. But also I found that I'm not bothered by these niggly what ifs or the devil angel thing that goes on our shoulder, because I've actually been able to identify what that actually is. So dealing with the subconscious is only part of it. I think the other part that's been very important as a result is the action that we take every day. And so I've also had to implement a range of different micro habits, like journaling, having regular what we call whip check-ins. So every day at 9 o'clock, I check in with my team. We set out the kaupapa and the things that we're going to focus in on. And I have bookends at the beginning of the day and I have bookends at the end of the day. I commit to whatever hours I'm working. As long as I'm moving my tinana, then I feel good. As long as I'm eating good kapai, and as long as I can get to a reasonable sleep time. I'm still trying to master that one, but if I can get to bed at a reasonable time, then that's a really good start. But I'm not like, okay, I've got like 50 things on my task list that I must achieve, because being an A-type personality and being prone to perfectionism, those are the behaviors and practices that actually you think you're onto it and you think that you're on top of things, but actually they're not helpful, because they're actually stressful and they increase the cortisol in our bodies, because you're always trying to be like a something or achieve a something versus just being cool, like it's all good. As long as I just, am gentle and I get these things done, then my life is no longer about ticking things off a list and achieving things, because as we know, you'll achieve them and then it's the next, and it's a bit like a drug, you're like, okay, it's the next thing and it's the next thing. And then I just realized after living my life on going from kaupapa to kaupapa that I became addicted to that. Actually became addicted to this rat wheel of doing, and then not like loving and experiencing it. And I was reminded this week about being present and being joyously present and happy in the practice. And that's quite different from just always trying to achieve and achieve versus, can I actually enjoy the experience as I go?
It's actually really usual, not unusual, but well, it is for me. But actually sitting, hearing you say these things, because that's actually my life. I don't ever enjoy the moment. I tick it off and I move on. And I would have had so many momentous, amazing moments, and everybody around me is celebrating. I'm sitting here, I've done it. So moving on, what's next? How do I now move forward? And it's such a poignant point that you've mentioned this, because that's a part of the journey. It's all a part of the experience, and it's immersing yourself in every aspect of everything that comes with it. And, I love that you mentioned that, because so many women are like that, because we need to feel fulfilled by ticking things off a box, moving forward, because we are aiming to improve, aspire, wanting to be in a position or a place that's the only way that we can see it. And the fact too also, and I speak a lot about, mums and single mums, being a single mum, man, it's hard. And being with yourself, being a mother as well, trying to actually manage that role of authority, of a hierarchy, and then manage a partner and manage a family. How do you do it?
I fail a lot, honestly. I fail a lot. I think I'm so lucky that people are so patient and graceful and love me. I have to say I'm sorry a lot, because I'm not, I think that that's part of life as well. I think that for a long time, I was doing really well in one section of my life. But, again, if one section of your life is pumping, but everything else is going to shit, then that's not really like a great living. And nobody knows that. No one knows what is happening over here, hidden away, because, we're really good at hiding it from public view. So I feel that, again, maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but I just feel like with all of the unwellness that's happening in the world, and I've always been passionate and committed to change and making a difference. That's been my number one mission in life. And sometimes that mission and that goal is lofty as it was, also blinded me to some really important factors around what is truly important. And I think that there are three things that help bring things back into equilibrium. I think death is a very important teacher, because it reminds us that the things that we think are so important literally disappear in crisis and also in death. So I feel not grateful for the learnings that come when somebody that you love you lose, but it's also a great learning to understand what is truly important. And I think it's always important as well to ask ourselves the question, if this was my last day on planet Earth, how would I want to live it? How would I want people to feel? How would I act and operate? So I feel that's been an important learning. I think the other important learning, which has really, really come to the fore for me at the moment, is I didn't always care, or I wasn't always considerate about the feelings of others, because I've been so outcomes orientated. And that's meant that I probably stood on a few more toes than I should have. It's meant that I may not have always acted with the level of care or having a duty of care to others, and it's also meant that I've not looked after myself very well. So I think the other part is to be responsible and to have obligation to others and actually own that. That's a different way of operating, and that's when I think I've become a hell of a lot more conscious, because you know how you affect others. And I think when you do run your own company like it's yours, other people are there to help on the waka, but when you know that it's not only your livelihood, but the work that you're doing is helping to lift up the livelihoods of others, I just feel like a different level of responsibility and obligation. And I think that, again, not talking about things, but actually action and being about it is where I focus my energy in 2021 anyway.
Documentation. It's the finalizing by putting a pen in your hand to paper and actually scripting and completing the action by putting down what it is that you want to achieve, or what is it that you actually want to remove, take away, or push to the side. Well, not push to the side, but on from. And then once you've actually done that, then it's up to you then to make a decision in terms of then where do you go from here? How do you then move forward? And that's the starting point for a lot of people. A lot of people will make the decision in their head, but then it never comes to the fore. It never comes to fruition. Yeah. So, what you're saying in terms of those actions makes absolute sense. And a lot of people just need to be aware. And that's another thing too, which awareness is something that I find on the daily. A lot of people have got no awareness of in terms of how they come across, the effect that they have on others, even in their own self. Walking into a wall, or even opening a door on them, and they didn't even realise that they've done it. So awareness is actually something that a lot of people don't have. And I know we were talking a bit about that. So, what sort of suggestions can you make in terms of just being more aware in terms of yourself towards others?
Oh, I've been totally oblivious to others for ages because I've been so busy, you know what I mean? Like, I can be present with people, but I'm thinking about 50 other things. I'm thinking about the 50 things that are happening ahead of me. And I think one thing that COVID has really helped highlight is just like, I miss being around people. I miss my family. I miss having friends around me. And so just listening, like just being a friend, those things were not high on my priority list at one stage of my life. And as I said, I've had a habit of being preoccupied with other things forever. And so, again, when you start noticing, when you start awakening different parts of your body, because you're starting to pay attention, you're starting to take better care, you're training, you're getting more healthy blood into your system when you're working out, all of those things take your consciousness to a whole other level. And then you start to be aware of, where have I been for the longest time? I have not actually been around. So I've actually had to not do a round of apologies and say aroha mai, but a little bit to say, hey, look, how are you, mate? You know, how have you been? And I think that the things that were so important at one point of my life aren't so much. Like, I actually love just hanging out and being curious about what people are up to and taking time to be able to hang out with people. I think when you're on a hustle, you know, you're on a hustle and it's always about get the next thing, get the next thing and hustle to survive, you don't have time to be present. And I think that's something else that building your wealth enables you to have the ability, the space to be strategic, to have the lifestyle that enables you to spend good time with friends like yourselves and hang out and enjoy each other's company. And so to answer your question, you know, to really whakarongo is to listen with your whole senses, and it isn't just about what you hear, but it's also what you feel. It's taking in your environment, it's taking in the āhua, the wairua of others, and really connecting with people in a completely different way. And when you work and connect with people meaningfully, then the relationship gets deeper. And I love friendship. I think that actually friendship and connecting with people has been one of the greatest elements of our company's success, is that, you know, we're not just treating people like numbers or clients. Like, we actually really care about the well-being of others. And so if you operate like that in everywhere and you love people truly, you know, you only get that back. And that's a great feeling to have.
That you have in yourself that you then need to pass and then instill in others to then spread the love, so then it becomes contagious, not like this Delta variant virus that we've been hearing about over how many months.
Not COVID.
Oh.
It's so cool too, because I've been listening to your kōrero, and you're always, to me, you're always so in touch with either yourself or other people, and because I hear you talk about connection, and then I hear you weaving that tūhono, that herenga through your life, and the people that you're connecting with, even though sometimes you think you've been disconnected. But I'm hearing a different story. I'm hearing you connecting with people on multiple levels, multiple stages, multiple phases, and actually showing your aroha towards people, and then the way you're breaking down your kōrero into elements and components that are vital to people's hauora. They're vital to people's mindset, and you talked about that and about this first 7 years, which is a recurring theme on the show. And so I've just been listening, and that's what you just finished talking about, listening. And I've had to learn that over the years, to just listen, because I'm such a problem solver. And instead of listening to people and asking them questions, I pull out a gate and I listen for a bit, and then I'm like, how can I help you? What do you want me to do? You know, like that, because we're people of our ilk, we're problem solvers, and we don't like to see people suffering. And so we're always trying to solve people's problems, when 9 times out of 10, and I learned this from Jamie, they just want someone to listen to them.
Whakaaro.
Yeah, they just want us to whakarongo ki ona whakaaro. Yeah. And so that's why we have one mouth and 2 ears. So yeah, for me, that's a big part of this show, and that's why I love having people like yourself on, because then you get different ethoses, you get different notions, and you get different whakaaro on approaches, attitudes towards things, and then you learn from outside influences, where people that you may have read about, or people you may have watched, things that we don't know about, and it's the exchange of whakaaro, it's the exchange of ideas, and they more often than not create spaces like this, and then multiple other spaces with other people where everybody can converge and contribute to each other's hauora. And that's what I love about the show, and love about having people like you on. Yeah, it's amazing.
Your contribution has been amazing, because ultimately, again, as Teezy said, we're here to support and tautoko others because, you know, life at the moment is a struggle. It's hard. It's the disruption everywhere, in every single individual's lives, and somebody and everybody needs something to help them get through it. So, you know, it's been amazing. And look, before we end, there's a couple of more things that I really want to delve into and understand on how you do this. How do you fill your cup?
I have really great friendships. I think, you know, I love learning. So part and parcel of the work that I'm privileged to do, to be of service to our collective iwi in the north, or to help problem solve, and knowing that the mahi that we're doing is making a difference. You know, we got to always have good metrics, so we need to know that what we're doing is truly making a difference. Not that, you know, I think it is, but actually it is making a difference. So always been open to feedback and knowing that our experiments, because I think that you've got to have the space to experiment and test things. So being able to have the space to test things and see them influence or make people think a different way, or help lift people's wairua so that themselves, you know, that really, really fills my cup. And I also love to see people learn. And so when I am privileged enough to be able to share some thoughts or work with others to influence change, and that people are learning as a result, you know, that's really wonderful. Being around my family fills my cup as well. I've got this amazing 16-year-old bane of my life son, who's also Te Whānau Apanui, from the same marae as you, Jamie, from Pāhawa. And, you know, you always think that you know a lot, and I think being open to being taught some things from our children is really important. That fills my cup, because I realise, like, I'm having some really uncomfortable discussions with my child that is really hard. And those are great learnings for me, you know, like I have to be humble in that space and recognise that at this time of his life, he's going to be my teacher. So that fills my cup to know that, you know what, maybe I haven't been such a bad parent and perhaps he's okay, and that he'll be okay when he goes out into the world. Like, I'm like, okay, cool. You know, at least at least you've survived to this point, and I hope that you're going to get, you know, you'll be okay moving forward. And I absolutely love the humans that I get to interact with on a daily. You know, I'm learning, and I consistently put myself in uncomfortable places for growth. And so I'm not just kind of hanging about and sitting on the edges. You know, I'm able to delve into quite challenging topics and areas in technology and data sovereignty, education. At the moment, we're doing work in supporting communities around responding to drought. What else are we involved in? Writing, communications. We're building platforms. We're helping to support Aropu in a significant national claim. So we get to do a lot of varied kaupapa, which are, although very, very different, it's actually the same thing. And the same thing is that we're dedicated to lifting up our people, to recognise the mana that we hold as rangatira, just inherently by the fact that we exist. It is also about reclaiming and finding ways to reclaim the taonga that we have lost. We might not get all of those taonga back, but if we can work strategically and smartly with others to help us rebuild our asset base, rebuild our whānau, regenerate our whenua, then I think we've got a chance. I think too often we've got this apocalyptic way of looking at the world, that if things basically go to shit, then we're all going to go to shit too. But actually the hidden narrative of Aotearoa is that actually it is love. Without that sounding cheesy, it's actually the love that we can produce in our families that heals trauma. It is the love that we can extol upon others and lift each other up. Like, that's actually where our strength and our mana is. And so creating more spaces to heal and support each other, I feel will be our saving grace as Indigenous people, and that is what I'm dedicated to. That's what fills my cup every day, and I'm really, privileged that I get to see real beautiful transformations on a regular. And I don't think that the everyday New Zealander sees that. They only see what they get through the Facebook. They only see what they get on television. They don't get to experience enough of what makes us beautiful. But it's not just Māori that are beautiful. All of humanity can be beautiful if we take better care of ourselves and each other.
So I just wanted to just to tap that magnet mind of yours, because obviously you're talking about e-commerce, and then because we've got a lot of experience with branding and e-commerce ourselves, because we do Amazon, and then I'm building platforms to sell products, building other platforms to sell other products on. So I don't know what your IP provisions are in terms of what you're allowed to disclose on the show, because obviously we're very well versed in NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and things of that nature. But what I wanted to touch base on for our audience and our whānau out there, our people out there who are listening to this show, what kinds of e-commerce platforms are you utilizing, or your students utilizing, or are they learning to utilize? And then what kind of products or services are they looking to broadcast and propagate, disseminate, however you want to slice that, in order to bring about revenue, in order to bring about an income, and then what kind of taxation challenges, etc., are they facing?
That's a deep and big question, brother. But so I think first up, the Kahal program is the brainchild of my dear friend Travis O'Keefe. So it's emerged out of the Te Whare Huka Huka, or the company's called Te Whare Huka Huka. Their kaupapa, their mission is to help transform the lives of 10 million Indigenous peoples, and in order to do that, this is about raising the household income of our people. So if you can help put more money into the pockets of whānau, then that has a multiplier effect. Travis will like that. That was, I took that little soundbite. But what's important in what we teach is, again, it's about mindset. It's about believing that you can do it. It's about getting over your own issues and challenges, because of course to sell, you have to be prepared to confidently speak about your product, whether or not that's you, AROHA, speaking about it, or you being able to write about it, or you hiring people to be able to sell your product on your behalf. So e-commerce is a system, and one of the number one rules that we share and teach is that it's not just build a website and people will come. It's actually about traffic. And therefore, what are the tactics and tools that you need to utilize to attract traffic into your e-commerce space? And then also, how do you cultivate meaningful relationships with your audiences, with your clients, so that you can understand what it is that they need, because they are your market. And there are also lots of different markets that you might not even know of. How might you tap into them and connect to those, or even get into businesses that, are completely unrelated to your personality. So you also have to have a level of sort of a disconnection, but often people think about their businesses as their babies, and they put everything they've got into raising that baby. But in this space, you could have multiple babies. And some of the babies, not saying you don't care about it, but some of the babies you don't need to have any kind of emotional connection to. It's there for a purpose. So we were lucky enough to forge a global partnership with Shopify. And the reason why we forged that relationship was to really leverage and lean into their established networks globally, and also tune into and seek the inclusion of successful Indigenous e-commerce entrepreneurs to share their story. Because the main thing for our people is to recognise, oh, hey, you're just like me. You're only 2 steps in front of me, so I could literally cut and paste what you do. So that was part of it, was exposing our people to entrepreneurs like them, but also the actual tactics. So often you'll see online there are lots of e-commerce gurus who will sell you their tactics. They will sell you their platform or their ideas, and they'll say, hey, look, do this, do this, do this. But they won't ever show you. And in order for you to get that knowledge, you have to pay for it. What we wanted to do is that we wanted to make that accessible to our whānau. So we partnered with government and other organisations, and we were able to provide over 270 $7,500 scholarship so that they could access this digital program, the step-by-step on how to establish your e-commerce business and learn the tactics that we've learned from others who are successful in this space and actually making money. To answer your question about what kind of businesses and organisations, this program has been running I guess formally for 3 years, which I've been part of, but actually has been a longer journey that Travis and Te Whare Huka Huka have been involved in. It morphed out of a kaupapa called Business in a Box, where they piloted it in partnership with Ngāti Ranginui, whānau from Ngāti Ranginui and others from around the motu. And then the program has continued to be refined based on feedback and development. And so we've had a wide range of companies and organisations that have done the learning. At this moment in time, of the 270 students that we have, some of them are being supported by a benefit, some have come out of the creative sector, others are already exporting, and everything in between. So we've got clothing, collectives, artists, taonga makers, rongoa makers, we've got coaches, Indigenous coaches, we've got spiritual healers. So anything that you could imagine is basically the kaupapa that our students are bringing through this doorway of learning. And then there are also others that haven't got a product or service. And so we help them find those options, whether or not it's print on demand, or we come up with a whole bunch of ideas for them to be able to pick one product and one service, so that they could take it through the step-by-step process that we're teaching, the step-by-step system, and then they can go back and they can rinse and repeat, and they can launch a whole bunch of products and services through the way that we've operated. And so there's been a significant investment in the teaching program. There's been a significant investment in the design and our approach. And again, we wanted to simplify and make it easier. However, we do fire people, or we release people from the program. So if you don't put the effort in, if you don't keep up with the mahi, if you don't attend the hui, if you don't support your team, if you don't get things done, you have a couple of warnings with love, and then we say ka kite. Because e-commerce and business generally is not for everybody. You have to have the muscle and the desire to do this work. And again, not everybody's ready, and not everybody's prepared to put in the effort, and not everybody's prepared to work hard. And, again, nothing comes easy, but we can be smart and we can lean into our relationships as Indigenous people to help each other. I'll lift you up. I'll help, shine the light on the path. If you choose not to go there, that's fine. That's your business. But, again, you can learn with others and support each other, learn with your whānau, or you can try and do it by yourself. And that, I think, is the way of the West. I think for us as Indigenous peoples, generally, is how can we support and tautoko one another as a whānau.
I'm just stealing a bit of the time away from Jamie here. The reason why I wanted you to elaborate on these key components and these elements with direct pertinence to e-commerce is because we're currently facing lockdown and all these measures that are prohibiting people from going to mahi, from going to work all over the motu, everybody to various degrees and different levels. And I think, especially with our people, because our people are predominantly tools to the coalface, so to speak, race. And so I think it's really important to get these e-commerce insights so that they can see a way to pivot out of their 9-to-5 jobs to align with people like yourself and ourselves. And then obviously to create forums and platforms and wānanga where we can teach our people, not just our people But like you said, people all over the world, people from different races, creeds, backgrounds, it doesn't matter. And it's really important that people have a safe place to go to, a safe space to go to. So if you're watching the show, Kay Marie Dunn, she's on TikTok, she's on Insta, on Facebook, and I don't know what this is going to do to your workload, how it's going to compound it, but I feel an unction to tell our audience that these provisions, these e-commerce provisions, they're available from Kay Marie, they're available from myself. I'm an Amazon expert, and I call myself an expert now because I went through that process all by myself. No one taught me how to do it, but again, it comes down to your mindset and what you were talking about. If you have a limited mind, because you've had your mind impinged upon in the first 7 years, that's going to create havoc with how you approach things throughout the course of your life. And the problem with that is if you have other people further entrench that mindset, it's going to stifle your progress when it comes to approaching things that you've never encountered before. And so when I hear you talk about that sort of stuff, it reverberates with me, because I like to think that I have a limitless mindset, but I still have to get pep talks by the lioness over here. So yeah, just in talking about e-commerce, whānau, contact Kay Marie, contact myself, even contact StayMe Always here, National Retail Manager of Pagani, because obviously she's there for a reason. Kay Marie's there for a reason. And like Kay Marie said, and I'm going to bear the phrase, I'm a professional ho tutu.
I like that.
Tupu ho for the show. Professional ho tutu.
Kia ora.
I love it.
Thank you both. Yeah, so you don't need to contact me directly. You can go to our website, www.twh.co.nz, and /Kahao, Kahao. There's a whole team of peeps that will receive your message. Just register for the next program. You do have to complete 5 comfort challenges, so it's not just you register, you get in. You actually have to do a series of quite interesting things on your social media page in order for you to even be able to get through the door. I don't have a TikTok channel, not yet. I've kind of just been sussing it out because part of me is like, I'm not going to be dancing on TikTok or doing songs or anything like that. I'm just trying to figure out what can I add value, be myself, but also do something of service in this social media space. So I've just been thinking about how I might do that. I've actually, I'll be engaging a rangatahi digital marketer to actually help teach me how to use TikTok effectively. But I also am trying to not be so in social media. I think what is more meaningful to me now is being able to use digital tools to be able to reach and connect to people, to be able to use these platforms to be able to, seed some ideas and connect with people. But I also feel now it's equally important for me to build real life friendships. Otherwise, everybody just becomes 2D, you know what I mean? And we don't connect and build friendships with real humans. And I really, really love and miss being around people.
I've got a tip for your tauira, actually, QR codes. So if you make international friends, jump on Facebook, whatever platform, make international friends, send your products with your QR codes to your friends, and then you've got a digital print on international shores. Other people see your product, they go, where did you get that from? Oh, just scan the QR code, and it takes them straight to the point of sale, which should be on your website, and then they go have a look at it and they buy it. So yeah, QR codes, international contacts. There you go.
Okay. Couple.
I actually love the fact about you discussing social media and the connecting and learning. A lot of people live their life through social media, and I must admit that's something that I am veering my young girls away from, because ultimately they keep wanting to turn back to that because that's how they perceive life, and unfortunately that is not life. So, I loved how you were clear in terms of how you use social media, and that's so important that we get that across to everybody, because at the moment that's how people are actually living. So look, I could keep talking forever and ever. I know Teasy could as well, and Kay Marie, I know that you're eager to head home and see your brother. So we'll end it there. But look, thank you so much for taking the time, being on the show, imparting all this amazing information, this knowledge, your own experience, and being able to give our viewers different means and ways and support on how to move forward in these times that we're currently living. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Ka pai, he mihi nunui kia kaurua I te pōnei, kia koutou ngā whānau, ki te mātakitaki I tēnei hōtaka hau, ngā mihi kaute kia koutou. Thank you everybody for coming here, and thank you both for inviting me to be part of this kaupapa, although it was really just an opportunity for me and the bro to kind of kick out because it's been a long time since we've seen each other. And he goes, hey sis, can you be part of the show? And I was like, oh sure. So it was really nice to use this as an excuse to hang out with you and see you in like 5D in real life. It's been nice to meet you, Jamie, and learn more about your story and what's important to you. And I think just continue to share these messages of and creating space for our community, our people, individuals to highlight what are the steps that they might take towards their own well-being. And I'm definitely not an expert. I definitely fall over and I get things wrong every day, but I try. You know, I might try and fail, but I will always try. And I hope that I make like little micro steps towards getting to where I need to go. And if I get really onto it, I might accelerate myself to where I want to be. But who knows where that is really? It's all a journey. Kia ora.
See you hopefully on the show soon.
Ka pai. Pō Mārie, ka kite.